I think, like I said, like my parents were like always like networking for me, like when I was
Hustling
young.
for you.
Yeah. So, they were like always like talking to people and like, my daughter can sing and
This is about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now. And we'll talk about the new music you've been putting out.
nice. So,
Cool, cool. First off, talk to me about where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. So yeah, I grew up here all my life, lived here all my life,
Oh, you're still
traveled a
in
bit,
Toronto?
but yeah, I'm still here.
Right on. What's it like growing up there?
Oh, it was really dope. But I love the city, and I think as I've gotten older and traveled outside of the city, I've grown a more and more of an appreciation for it, and just the different mixture of cultures. And we've got great food here, and it's really nice. They keep it clean, and it's a really nice culturally diverse place to live.
Yeah, it's big music too. There's a lot of bands out of Toronto.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely a growing music scene. Unfortunately, we don't have that many platforms to showcase it here, but I think that in the next decade, hopefully that will build over time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Canada has an amazing thing through the government, right? For artists, like they'll help kind of sponsor you,
Yeah,
so to speak, right? They'll help kind of set up that, which I think is amazing. And I've talked to a lot
it's
of people. I've talked to people from Toronto or bands out of Toronto. It's interesting because they're like, yeah, because they want to like try to compete with the U.S. And I'm like looking at the charts. I'm like, huh, like like all the biggest artists right now, at least, are all a lot of them are from out of Canada. It's crazy. You have Drake and
right.
Bieber and The Weeknd, like so
Yeah,
much talent coming out of Canada.
yeah, it's true. It's crazy how we've been able to make a lot of noise despite like I said, lack of platforms and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it unfortunately still to this day, a lot of artists have to go outside of Canada to get the attention first, and then
Mm.
they get the support from the country. And even the system that they have that's supposed to support a lot of bands, it does, but it is kind of limited to a certain demographic
Oh,
of
is it?
artists. Yeah, and
Okay.
it's not something that anybody likes to talk about, but it's real.
But it's obvious.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the urban acts really don't get the same kind of support. So it's really limited to, a
Oh.
lot of folk acts and, still like the more of the alternative and rock type bands.
Hmm.
They haven't really, they haven't really moved with the way that the culture has been growing. Like they're not growing with it,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So, myself included, and a lot of artists that I know have tried so hard to get help, and have been continually denied, despite there being artists in other demographics or other types of genres of music that don't even have the same kind of accolades. Like I've tried to get grants many, many times and been rejected over and over.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would imagine like, yeah, because I've talked to people that are like, yeah, it's amazing. Like you just apply for these grants and then they'll help you,
Right.
fund a record. But then it's like, well, how many people are actually applying for these grants? I would think they only select a certain amount. And it sounds like you're saying that it's not it's not as easy as they make it sound like it is.
Yeah, it's easy for certain genres, definitely
Hmm.
for them. Like I do know a lot of people have been successful in getting it, but if you kind of look at the different genres that are successful and unsuccessful, you can see a pattern.
Ah, okay. I see. I see. Well, that's unfortunate. Well, but I mean, you're here and you're doing awesome. So who cares about the grant? I'm sure
Right.
it
There's
would
other
help,
ways.
but yeah. Anyway, well, that's awesome. So talk to me about how you got into music originally.
Well, for me, I was singing since I was like really, really young, like since before I can remember. So my parents were aware of me like singing as like a very, very young child. And so, I guess it was just something that I liked to do as like a pastime when I was young, the same way that other children like to play with toys and stuff. And so,
Oh, so you're always singing then?
Yeah, it was like you know, people say like, when did you decide to do music? And I feel like I didn't ever have like a moment where I was like, I want to do this. I feel like I was kind of like born into it and always wanted to do it since I was a child, even before I knew what being a singer even really was. I just loved singing to music. And so I think over time, my parents kind of started to recognize that I could sing and, you know, and I had somewhat of a gift in it very young. And so, you know, they just supported me in, you know, helping me find different opportunities to be able to do that, whether it be at school or whether it be with different, you know, I started working with different producers and stuff like that. I got in the studio very early, like around 11, 12 years old. So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's cool that your parents were that supportive of it. Because a lot of parents would be like, yeah, okay, we'll throw you in singing lessons, but then we're going to have you try 50 million other things before, you know,
Right.
you land on something. But the fact that they took that right away and embraced it, I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really it was definitely a blessing. I was fortunate because yeah, I do know a lot of people who have struggled with you know, with getting support at a young age. And so, you know, they had a lot of different hurdles to jump over just to get support in other places. So I had to
So
figure that out.
did you start with, you said you're obviously singing. Were you in like the chorus or choir, or did you do like vocal lessons? Like, I mean, to be in the studio at 11, like what was the journey to 11 to getting inside of an actual studio?
So I started singing at like school assemblies. I would like, you know, do at first I think I had like a solo in the choir, and then when the music teacher recognized that, you know, I could sing, then she was like, okay, you can do like, you know, if you want to sing a song for the assembly or for the talent show, then I would start doing that. I did sing for a Boston Blue Jays game, which was
Wow.
1,000 people. Yeah, that was when I was, I think it was like 8 or 9 at the time. Uh,
Really? Did you do
yeah,
like the national anthem or something?
yeah. It was the U.S. and Canadian national anthems.
Wow. By yourself?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible.
Yeah. So that was like a big moment for me back
Oh
then,
yeah.
and yeah,
That's still a big moment, right? I mean, to be able to go out there and do that, was it something that you, I'm sure you had a what, audition for that?
I think, you know, like I said, like my parents were like always like networking for me, like when I was
Hustling
young.
for you.
Yeah, so you know, they were like always like talking to people and like, you know, my daughter can sing, and I don't know, like, you know, things just were aligning, and you know, I think they had some sort of connection with a producer that had a connection with the musical director that was handling whoever sang the national
National
anthems.
anthem. Sure.
Yeah, so I recorded a version of it at a studio, and then they sent it in, and so they said, yeah, like, you know, bring her and have her sing the national anthem. So yeah, that's
Wow. I will say that Canada has the superior national anthem. They're the Oh Canada is like the far the best national anthem, I think, if you were
really,
ranking nationally. I think it's a cool.
that's funny. I mean, we grew up with it, right? So I think we're like immune to even like knowing
Yeah,
whether it's
I hear
good
it.
or
I'm like,
not.
I can get down to this song.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, yeah, I always, yeah, I think it's a great national anthem. So you recorded that at 8 and then did that, or were you at 11 when you did the national anthem?
I think I was about, I could have been 10. It was like in between the ages of 8 and 10 years old.
Okay,
I still have pictures and some videos from that
that's
time.
awesome.
Yeah. So I recorded it and then they sent it in. And yeah, and I did that. And then I started again through just like my parents networking. I ended up meeting a producer in Toronto, and that was the first time I really started actually getting in the studio, and I started writing original music. So
Really? That early
yeah,
on? Wow.
yeah. Mhm. So I recorded like my first song was called "So Happy," and it was I still have that recording. Uh,
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, and so yeah, it was just, you know, that was like where it started, and then it kind of just continued in that wave of me just working with different producers. When I was about 13, 14, I signed with a management company that was based in the US, and these producers that were actually based in London
Hmm.
and like Europe, they were coming to Toronto to work with me on like a yearly basis. And so we were just like, I was in the studio with writers and recording and the whole thing. And, you know, that was That was a long experience. I had a lot of experiences being in not so good contracts.
Hmm.
So, you know, it was a learning experience, and I learned a lot, but it wasn't conducive to achieving what I was trying to achieve very
Okay.
young, which was I was trying to become a professional recording artist, and be known worldwide. But
Hmm.
the contracts that I was trapping myself in those times, and the people that I was working with, I'm sure they had, for the most part, good intentions, but it wasn't working. And I
Right.
didn't know who I was. I was really young. And I think a lot of like young artists, especially female young artists, they struggle with finding who they are and finding their sound. And when you're that young, it's really hard to know too, right? So you have a lot of people that are trying to put a sound on you, and there's no identity. And so
Hmm.
it can be very tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for anybody, no matter what age it is, if you're trying to do this to like
True.
really find your sound, right? Or
Right. Yes.
I come from radio. I was on the radio for a long time and
Right.
before doing this, but like, and that was the thing, like people at like when I got into it, people would always say like, you just be yourself, just be you. And it's like, and that was the hardest thing ever. Like, how do I be
Right.
me? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm trying to, because you're just trying to either mimic what other people are doing or kind of where it's like, well, you are the best you. Like that person's doing the best of them. You're not going to be able to overdo with them. You can't be more them than yeah they are, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I think is interesting, and it's a more so, like, especially if you're young and you have
Right.
these people that are professionals in the industry probably telling you like, oh, you know what, Haley, this is the sound you need. You need to sound like this. So we're going to write a song that sounds like this, and then that's going to be
Yeah.
your sound.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So.
That's exactly what I was going through. And I remember at the time I really wanted to do R&B, but the producers and the management company that I was working with at the time, they wanted me to go more in like a pop, kind of almost like
Mhm.
a dance pop route, and that just wasn't what I was feeling at the time. And so that was a struggle. And it's funny because I was, they were trying to get me a deal, and that was, I think, right on the brink when the music industry just started changing completely, because streaming was starting to, well, no, streaming hadn't started, but it was the downloading, like you remember LimeWire and Napster,
Oh, sure. Okay.
like
Hmm.
started coming in. And so like record sales were like plummeting because nobody wanted to buy albums anymore, and nobody wanted to buy music anymore because they could just download it for free. And so
Right.
a lot of execs got fired, and that was right around the time when they were trying to get me a deal. And we had spent like about a year or two in the studio recording all this music in hopes of them getting me signed. And so that was like a moment where everything just went into pause, and then I was stuck in limbo in this contract, and nothing was happening. And it was like a 6-year contract that I was locked
Oh,
into.
wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it wasn't until, so I got into that contract about I think 14, and it wasn't until I was 18 that I actually finally spoke to a lawyer who looked at my contract and realized that it wasn't a legal contract.
Really?
Mm,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Well,
yeah.
that's wow. Okay, so you did 4 more years of this when you should when you could have probably been out of it, right?
Yeah, I definitely could have. I definitely could have. They didn't take the right legal steps in order to be able to sign an artist of my age at the time. I was a minor.
Oh,
To
sure.
be able to sign me for that many years, they would have had to do certain things that they didn't do
Hmm.
legally, which made the contract void. So
Interesting. Well, I'm
yeah,
sure that's hard, especially for your parents trying to be supportive of you, and then I don't. Do they come from the musical background at all or industry background?
no, they don't. They were just, I think, I don't know. I just somehow I came into this life with very supportive parents at
Yeah.
a young age for music. But, the double-edged sword with that is that sometimes when you have parents who are very supportive, they can also be very heavy-handedly involved. And so what
Mm.
happens is, as you get older and you start to realize certain things about yourself and certain decisions that you want to make, it becomes a conflict because your parents are so involved in your career and all the decisions that you're making. But you start to learn things about the music industry and how things work, especially after me being in, that wasn't the only bad contract I was in. So me being in multiple bad contracts, being locked and stuck constantly, I started to realize when I got older, I was like, this is not the way to go. And I started meeting people like my producer that I work with now, who was starting to educate me on how to, move in the music industry and still keep my, my identity, still be able to understand, that I don't have to just jump into a contract. I can actually build my, especially in this climate, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
independent artists have so much power now. I mean, we can just upload our music. We can literally just distribute our music. There's TuneCore, there's DistroKid, there's all these distribution companies. And, the ability to create music and put it out and even market it yourself is there. And so when I started getting educated on that, I started to kind of feel like I needed to take a whole different um, direction in music. And because, that wasn't 100% understood on that side,
Mm-hmm.
it created a lot of conflict. And so I had to make a decision to kind of sever myself from that and move on, to making decisions myself that
Mm-hmm.
were good for me, you know?
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
just think of how much the industry has changed within the past like year and a half. I mean, once
Right.
everyone's inside, it's like, okay, well, there's not touring isn't as prevalent anymore.
Right.
And there's song, then like everyone's at home on TikTok, and then that becomes like this thing where you
Yeah.
could basically go viral and have a song start charting off of
Right.
a sound that somebody ends up, repeatedly using. And
Yeah.
it's just crazy to think that nowadays. I love what you said where you can really make it as an independent artist. I mean, you could spend a few $100 on a microphone and buy a loop off YouTube or something, and you could write a song and put it out without spending 100 grand to rent a studio out and hire these people to put it together for you. And
Yeah.
you'll hear these stories about kids that will just make songs and throw them up on SoundCloud or whatever. It'll find its way
Yeah.
onto TikTok, and they'll get this huge fan base, and then the major labels are like, oh, hey, I see that you
Right.
have 1 million listens on this song, like what do
Right.
you got going on, like, and at this point you can kind of be like, well, let me weigh my options here instead of
Exactly.
feeling
And that,
like
and that
obligated to sign or whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
exactly. Yeah. No, that's true. It's so true. It's that puts the power in the artist's hands. And
Mm-hmm.
before it was kind of like, you get signed to these labels and they call all the shots. They own all your masters, they own all your rights to your music, so you're basically almost like a slave for them. You don't,
Mm-hmm.
you get the fame, right? But this is why there's so much history of so many artists getting screwed over by labels. And that's just the business. I mean, if you don't know the business, you're gonna get screwed. It doesn't matter what business it is. And the music
Right.
industry is no different than that, right? So I think that now more than ever, we actually have the ability to understand our industry and to be able to build something at least, so that when you do, start having conversations with labels, you have you have groundwork, and so you have
Mm-hmm.
leverage, and you can
Right.
negotiate. You can really say, like, these are the things that are important to me, and if I don't get those, I'm not signing. And the thing is that when you're able to make a living off of your music, you don't have to be desperate to sign a deal. As much as you might want to be, the next big superstar, you don't have to feel like, okay, this is my only chance. Keep building your
Mm-hmm.
fan base, and these labels will come back, because they don't want to miss out on the next big viral artist or the next artist that has the big fan base, right? So sometimes they'll back down if it's not what, if you're asking for things that they're not ready to give. But if you keep building yourself, then the inevitable is bound to happen. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's got to be thousands upon thousands of stories of bands that are massive now that got turned down, or they're like, a bunch of ex label or A&R person was like,
oh
oh, you guys don't have it. And then sure enough, they're, selling Grammys or, whatever,
yeah,
touring the
absolutely.
world, which
Yeah,
is it's all I've heard a lot of people say it just takes one yes. And it depends on who that person is. And if they want to support you or if you have the song, like it's going to happen. I mean, it's just wild, especially nowadays. Like you said, the leverage is in your hands now. If you can build that community yourself, then it's, well, instead of what can you do for me, it's like, or I mean, what can I do for
for you.
you, right? I'm all
Yeah.
confusing myself here. Wait a minute,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like they'll come to you and say, hey, and you're like, yeah, well, I've already done all this by myself, so how are you going to help that? How are you
Right.
going to
What are
leverage
you
me even
bringing to the
further?
table?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's so fascinating that you've been doing this for so long. I mean, it's unfortunate to hear about the struggles with obviously the record contracts and all of that, but it's like try to say about like your parents, like they aren't in the industry, so they're probably like, oh, well, helping her sign this deal, like, because in my mind, if I didn't know anything about it, I'd be like, okay, record deal means success and something
Right.
happening, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
well, I don't know how to do this, but these people obviously do. So if I give, my daughter the ability to do this, then hopefully it will work out. But I mean, it doesn't obviously always go
Yeah.
that smoothly. So.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
okay, so you're obviously in these bad deals. So what happens? Like, how do you break out of that, and how do you decide, like, I'm not doing this pop route. I want to do the R&B route. I'm gonna be. This is like me and my project. And how do you start over?
Well, after I got out of that first contract, I worked with a couple different people, and again, it was kind of like a repeat of not necessarily a genre issue at that point, but it
Oh,
was
okay.
just kind of like it was more so now whether it's the right people to work with, and again, I think that the blame doesn't really fall on anybody. It's more so just that I was really struggling to know who I was and how to maneuver in the music industry because I just didn't know, so um, I definitely I made a lot of moves that were not beneficial for a while, like over and over and over again, trying to get it right. And then it wasn't until, I met my producer in 2014. And
Hmm.
we just had some conversations because at that time there was actually a deal that I had on the table and it was a crappy deal, and there were people that were around me in my circle that were pushing me to sign, and I didn't feel like I should because I felt like it was just going to go into the same exact pattern. Um, and at that point, there was a lot of things that had happened that were just starting to make me feel like I don't know. Is the music industry what I thought it was? Because I was just experiencing a lot of really dark things, like I had met a lot of people in the music industry that had done big things and, produced records of like my favorite artists and wrote songs for some of my favorite artists. And, as a young artist and being naive because you're young and you've never been in this, this environment before, you're like all excited to be working with these people. But then you start seeing that it's not about the music. It's about, I mean, every man in the industry wants to sleep with every girl they sign. It's not about the music anymore. It's about the look. Like,
Yeah.
are you gonna drink with us? Are you gonna smoke with us in the club? Like, it's not about the music. And I started to realize that nobody cares about the music, at least where I was and the circle that I was around at that time. And it was starting to really make me feel down. And I felt like I couldn't be myself. And I felt like, this is not what I dreamt of as a child. Like when I pictured myself being an artist, this doesn't resemble that at all. And so it was starting to really actually make me feel like I don't know if what I envisioned even exists. And so I was in this mode of just like not like just feeling very discouraged. And so when I met my producer in 2014, we started having conversations, and he was kind of like just showing me that there's another route. You don't have to take that route. And so, that's how we started getting into the conversation of like, let's just start working. Let's start experimenting, and he's like really good and at seeing an artist and speaking to them, and he kind of knows how to pick up on the energy and the aura of that artist and bring it out in the music. So instead of the approach that a lot of music execs take is when they see you, they go, oh, we should make her sound like this and look like
Right.
this.
We'll put you in this box over here.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Instead, he's going from an approach of like, what do you like? Who are you? Let's bring that out in the music. Let's bring that out in your image. Like let's figure out who you are and what you like and like enhance that. And that was the first time I ever really had somebody approach my music and even just me like in that way,
Mhm.
So it was eye-opening, and I just really took my time and I started doing a lot of writing. It was actually a writing group that I was writing with at the time, and so we were just writing to write. Whether the songs became placements, whether the songs were mine, we were just writing to write, and that was a really great experience because it helped to kind of refine my writing skills. I think anytime you're in a constructively competitive environment like that, it does kind of elevate you. And so there was that. And then I started releasing original music. Before that, I had a YouTube channel that I was doing a lot of covers on. And so I did kind of build up a fan base off of
Okay.
that.
Hmm.
But that was covers, you know? So there was no real identity to that until I started releasing my original music.
What was it like putting out music of your own for the first time? Were you nervous about that? I mean, especially if you have a fan base, right? If you have a fan base on YouTube and now you're like, okay, I'm gonna put out something of my own. Like,
Right.
are you gonna
Yeah.
like it? Like, was it scary for you?
For me, I don't think I approached it with fear. I think it was
Okay.
more so I was curious to see how it would be received, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
um but the thing is, and this is still exists to this day on every platform, is that whatever fan base you build is based on the content that you were putting out. And so with me putting out covers, I built a fan base that knew me for putting out covers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, starting to put out original music is not the same, especially because, for one, at the time, a lot of people were putting out covers, but the trick to doing that was to do a popular song, right? So if a
Right.
song
Something
came
people
out,
can. Mm-hmm.
right, yeah, everybody's searching for it. So the chances are they're going to see your cover because they're searching for the new Beyonce song or they're searching for the new whatever song, you know what I mean? And so when you put out your original music, now it's not that you don't have that, right? So you're not getting the same visibility. And also there were a lot of, you know, the fans that I accumulated off of the covers that were like, well, this is nice, but I'm used to her doing covers. And so it's not the same fan base. So I kind of had to not start from scratch, but it was a whole different beast
Sure.
in now accumulating a new fan base or building upon a fan base that was a completely different thing, because now it's just me. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the new Beyonce song done differently. It's Haley Smalls, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
you guys don't really know who that is other than a girl who can sing covers, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So
Right. So now you gotta, yeah, either keep the people. You kind of run into a fork in the road, where it's like, do I keep appeasing these people with my cover songs,
yeah.
or do I just go full on all original music and kind of see how that plans out? And obviously, you made the right decision
Oh
doing
yeah.
the original music.
Yeah.
But was that first record, "This Is Me"? Was that the first one you worked on with your producer now?
No, the first record I actually put out that was original was a song called When You Need Love. So it was just a single.
Okay.
That and it was received really well. And then I think I put out like a few, maybe one or two other singles before I put out This Is Me. And then that was my first actual body of work that I put out. And that was
Hmm.
with the same producer. So it was entirely produced by him. And yeah, it was that was the start of everything. And then from then I just continued to release original music, and my fan base grew.
Hmm.
So, you know, yeah.
What would you say, like, after putting out the full record, were you performing live a lot at this point, or mainly just putting songs out online?
I was mainly just putting songs out online. I was in the studio a lot. I was writing.
Hmm.
I did do like a few performances, but nothing major. The performance scene like is not really, it's not the same as in like New York or in
Got
LA,
it.
in
Hmm.
Toronto. You know, like there are a lot of venues, don't get me wrong. But I personally don't find that performing at those venues, because I did it a lot before I started releasing original music. I did perform at a lot of venues. I was doing that a lot back then. But it doesn't. We don't, like I said, we don't really have a local music scene on the street. Like we don't have that thing where, you know, you perform at a show and you have like, you know, a bunch of people in the audience that could help you. It's just not really like that. It's just more so like, okay, you sang at this thing, and then, you know, it might be good for social media, and you know, it creates a certain level of awareness with the people that are there. But I found that using the various platforms was a lot more helpful in building awareness of who I was, and building a fan base than it was in performing, at
Hmm.
least in Toronto, I would say.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense. You have a worldwide audience, right at
Right.
your
Yeah.
fingertips,
Yeah.
which
Exactly.
is bizarre to think. I mean, but it's the truth. With that, like, what would you say? after you know, you score, you have this producer now, you're working with him, you're writing songs, you're putting out original music. What would you say like the next big milestone for you in your career would be?
After that point, you mean like back then? Still,
Yeah, or even up to yeah, wherever. I mean, I want to talk to you about the new record, but like
right,
say up until COVID happened.
right,
From
right.
2019 back, what would you say like a big milestone moment was for you?
I think the big milestone moment was really when my music started to gain traction. Like I started to really see my fan base grow. So we were just trying different things and releasing different songs and trying different strategies online to just increase the scope of awareness and there was a point where I think it was my song Type Away, and that
Hmm.
song hit like 100,000 views on Facebook at the time. And that was
Wow,
big for me, like at the
that's
time
huge.
I was like, holy shit, like, I never seen numbers like this. Like I was
Right.
seeing things like, I mean, I had seen numbers like that, but for my covers, before. But for my original music, that was huge.
Hmm.
It was just circulating everywhere. And so from then it was just a constant build. So, and we were putting out a lot of music at that time. So it was just constantly building, and I was seeing my subscribers grow exponentially. And so with that obviously came a lot of calls, a lot of people contacting and stuff like that. But I just both me and my producer were in agreement that it just wasn't time to sign any deals. And I just really wanted to keep growing everything because I knew what I wanted. It's at that point I really knew what I wanted in a partnership, whether
Hmm.
it be with an investor or a label, or any type of partner that could bring something to the table. I knew what I wanted, and I wanted to make sure that I could fairly make those requests. So I just continued to do that, and those were really, I think that was really the milestone up until COVID. And then just coming up to now, um, I do actually have partnerships that are amazing, and it's the first time I actually really have support other than being an independent artist. Because up until now, I've funded everything, myself, just with
Wow.
literally just me and my producer. So all the music videos are independently funded. All the everything that I've done has literally just been independent. So I've had no help whatsoever.
And it's not cheap to do that.
No, it's not. It's really
So
not.
that's really impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's I really want for independent artists, and I know the awareness is growing naturally, but I really want for independent artists to understand. And I try to talk to, whenever I run into other artists, I try to talk to them about this if I can tell that they're not there yet in their understanding that this music thing is not about releasing a song and just hoping and praying that it goes viral. It's no different than any other business. If you were to open a restaurant or you were to have a shoe brand, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a product, and then you're going to invest your money into that business, right? Because you don't start a business without being able to invest something, right? You need to be
Hmm.
able to invest your money in it. You make that investment, and that involves usually losing money. But then if you can put the marketing strategies behind that to make sure people know that there's a product, right? Like people know that your restaurant's there, or people know that your clothing shop is there. You have to do marketing strategies, whether it be putting up a billboard or putting something online or whatever it is. And eventually you break even, and then eventually you make a profit. And music is no different. It's the same thing. So you can make a living off of your music. And then if you can start now, once you make a profit, putting that money that you're making off of your music back into your music, then all it does is just grow, just like any other business. And so I think that that's why a lot of artists have a hard time getting support sometimes from their parents or from like family members, is because they look at it as some sort of pipe dream that is just like a one in a million, like lottery ticket. Like, you want to be a singer, you want to be an artist, you want to be a rapper. That's like some sort of like pipe dream that is most likely not going to happen. But it's really just not the case. It's just that people just don't have the understanding that music is a business, just like any other
Hmm.
business. So if you can be an entrepreneur in any other business, and you can be successful in music too. You just have to have a good product, investment, and marketing, and that's it.
I love that. I love that because it's totally true. You
Yeah.
have to, nobody. And I tell this to my kid. I have two younger boys, and the older one's like obviously he's way into like YouTube and
Yeah.
how these kids have like these insane numbers of like X million subscribers. And I'm
Right.
like, and he's like, and I'm like, you have to understand that this person did not just wake up one day, make a video and put it on the internet. And then millions of people thought it was amazing. And they came to him and subscribed. And then he just goes, oh, well, the next one should be a hit too. It's not like that. It's this,
No.
these people are grinding so hard on a daily basis, like full time. This is all they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're creating content. And the reason why theirs succeeds is because they're not copying what other people are trying to do. So like you have the one
Key
thing and then you can't just do what that guy did. Again, it's the same thing. You're going to get lost in the noise.
in the noise, that's one thing about the internet is it's completely saturated.
Yeah.
So you have to find your, and it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, is that you can't be somebody better than they can be themselves, right? So like the key is be who you are, because nobody can be 100% you. You might have some people that are similar to you, you know what I mean, but they're not you. So
Mhm.
everybody can bring something different to the table. So I think authenticity is the key. It's one of the big keys, and then the other key is just consistency and understanding the industry that you're in. And I think if you have those three things, like, failure is really not an option. It really isn't. I think that all the people who failed quit before they had all the keys to success.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna circle back to this because the last question I ask is always about advice to aspiring artists, and you're giving so much amazing advice right now. But I really want to talk to you about your your new songs. But
Right.
yeah, that's such great advice. I think too, though, a lot of people, and this is just me spouting, is like it's not like people are like, okay, well, if you go to college and then you get a degree in this and then you go get a job at this, then you're gonna have like this financial security in the sense that you're gonna have job security. Whereas if you, but that goes for any entrepreneur. If you're gonna start a restaurant, you
Right.
could be the best cook in the world, but if you don't know how to market it, nobody's gonna come into your restaurant. And then the guy next door who makes half as good of a pizza as you has all this marketing and all the bells and whistles. People are gonna go over there.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna have
No,
to
it's
try to,
there.
yeah, right. They know it's there, and they might see yours and go, "Oh, yeah, maybe I'll try that, guys." But then there's no one there, so it's like, well, if no one's there, there's probably a reason why no one's there.
Right.
It's like one of
Exactly.
those things. Like you kind of have to, yeah, you got to put in what you're gonna get out of it. But, and I love your advice. I'm curious about your new song and where were you when COVID happened? Were you working on these new songs or like how did that affect the songs you've been putting out recently?
Honestly, like, it didn't really affect me all that much. I think just because, um, yeah, it didn't affect my ability to make music. I have a studio that I work out of, and it's a private studio. So, I just continued working. I continued releasing music. Obviously, the internet has been a savior to artists in this climate with everything happening with COVID, because if we were just relying upon live performances, we would have been screwed royally.
Oh, sure.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, that I think the only thing that um, possibly was impacted was just the amount of traveling. But I still did travel, but it was just the amount of traveling, because obviously the advisories were constantly going, in
Mhm.
and out constantly, and things were always changing. But yeah, I mean, it slows things down. Definitely slowed a couple things down in terms of just plan making and stuff like that. But yeah, I continued making music, and these new songs, the new song do better is
Mhm.
actually a year and a half old, so it's
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it was made a year and a half ago, and it was kind of part of a vault of music that I've had, that's constantly growing. And yeah, my team and I in going through the records and trying to decide, which records are going to be going on the next project and which one should be singles. That was the one that we just felt like, we should go with. We felt like it was really genre friendly. It was really age friendly, race friendly, just kind of just like um, kind of demographically like wide, like for suited for a wide audience. And so, and also just, everybody just felt like it was a great record. So that's kind of how we decided on that. And yeah.
That's awesome. It's a great song. I like the song a lot. I like the artwork you have too. It's got that like pop. pop art sound like look
Right.
to her. She's like on the
Yeah.
phone and
Right. Right.
do better. Yeah, it's cool. I really think it's cool. And you said you have other songs, obviously. So you have a bunch in the can ready to come out.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna be releasing my next project this year for sure, and before that, we're gonna release I think probably about 2 more singles before the project
Amazing.
change. But yeah, and then so we're planning for that right now. Um, yeah.
That's exciting. That's so exciting. And I appreciate your time, Haley. It's been awesome. Circling back to what you're saying before, I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Yeah, I think like you said, a lot was covered, but I just think that I just think that is imperative to be yourself, to be authentic, and it's okay if you don't know what that is. I think that if you don't know what that is, then that just really means that you need to spend the time figuring out what that is, and don't rush it. You know, like we're living in an age now where age doesn't even matter anymore. You know, like there was this time back then where everybody felt like there was like a time limit, like to being successful. And it's crazy because I think streaming and just the way things are now, people just want to hear good music. They don't care who it's coming from, even just there's a lot of barriers being broken in the way people look, and whether they're marketable or not. Like there was all these restrictions on artists before, like you needed to look this way, you needed to sound this way, you needed to be this age, and a lot of that is kind of breaking down now. So there's no need to rush and be like, shit, if I don't make it in the next 2 years, I gotta quit and find something else. No, like if you love this, take your time and you will do yourself the biggest favor in just figuring out who you are and understand the business. And I think that for specifically artists in music, like rappers, singers, I think that it is so imperative to learn how to record yourself, even at the basic level, because it will save you a lot of money and it will tremendously improve your creative process and just your ability to understand the creative process even more, so that when an engineer comes and mixes your song bad and you don't like it, you can tell them, I don't like this, I don't like this part, because you know what reverb is or what EQing is or what actually goes into mastering and mixing. I think that it's just really important to know the business.